In today's video, we will explore the story of Jephthah, one of the judges of Israel, whose life and decisions bring us deep lessons about faith, leadership, and the risks of making rash promises. Although Jephthah was rejected by his own family, he became a central figure during his people's time of crisis, being called to lead and face a great threat. However, as we will see, his choices were not without major consequences, especially when he made a vow to God that resulted in an unimaginable sacrifice. Stay with us until the end as we reflect on the lessons from this story and how it still speaks to us today. So, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel Bible and Faith, and join us in discovering this fascinating answer. Jephthah, one of the judges of Israel, had a life marked by rejection and adversity. He was the son of Gilead, a prominent man among the Israelites, but his mother was a prostitute. Because of this, Jephthah was treated as an illegitimate child by his own family and society. The culture of that time highly valued lineage and paternal inheritance, so Jephthah's half-brothers, the legitimate sons of Gilead's wife, did not accept him as part of the family. As they grew up, Jephthah's brothers decided to expel him from home so that he would have no share in their father's inheritance. They said, "You shall have no inheritance in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman." With nowhere to go and no support, Jephthah fled to the land of Tob, a distant region from Gilead. This forced exile was a difficult time, but it also shaped his character and strengthened his leadership skills. In Tob, he found refuge among a group of marginalized men, people who had no place in society and lived on the fringes of the law and tribal norms. Over time, Jephthah became the leader of this group, forming a sort of improvised army. His fame as a warrior grew, and he became known for his bravery and combat skills. Despite being rejected by his own family, Jephthah did not become a bitter or purposeless man. On the contrary, he transformed his pain into strength and prepared himself, perhaps unknowingly, for a future in which his leadership and courage would be essential. His story demonstrates how life's hardships can be used for personal growth and the development of important skills. What makes Jephthah's journey even more remarkable is the contrast between his despised origins and the role he would later play. God often chose unlikely people to fulfill his purposes, and Jephthah perfectly fits this pattern. His family rejection and his experience among the marginalized were part of God's plan to make him a strong leader, prepared to save Israel. The time in Tob was not just a forced exile but a life school for Jephthah. His leadership skills grew, and his reputation as a warrior became well established. Later, when Israel needed a strong leader to face the Ammonites, the very leaders who once despised him would seek him out to guide them in battle, showing how destiny can turn rejection into redemption. After Jephthah was expelled from his homeland, the situation in Israel worsened even further. The people were threatened by an invasion from the Ammonites, who began attacking the tribes of Gilead. The crisis became critical, and the leaders of Israel, unable to face the threat on their own, sought help from Jephthah, who was now living in Tob with his group of outcast men. The elders of Gilead made their request clear: they were willing to offer him a leadership position if he agreed to fight against the Ammonites. Jephthah, who had long been rejected by the very society that now sought him out, was initially cautious. He questioned the elders. "Why do you call me now, when you despised me and drove me out of my father's house?" Jephthah's question reveals not only his pain and frustration but also his understanding of the weight of leadership. He knew it would not be easy to command those who had once rejected him, and he may have felt disillusioned by the sudden trust of his former adversaries. However, the elders insisted, stating that if he saved them, they would recognize him as the leader of Israel. Jephthah then accepted the challenge, not out of vanity or a desire for revenge, but because he understood that the moment required courage and leadership. By accepting the call, Jephthah was not only tasked with fighting an external threat but also with restoring order and justice within his own land. His role as a leader required more than just combat skills; he needed to be a judge and a spiritual guide for the people of Israel. His decision to accept leadership was a great demonstration of forgiveness and wisdom. He was able to overcome personal resentment for the greater good, the survival and prosperity of his people. This story of calling and redemption is a powerful example of how God uses people with difficult pasts to fulfill his purposes. Jephthah was chosen not because he was the most qualified by human standards, but because he was willing to respond to the divine call and act with courage and faith despite the adversities he had faced. Before going into battle against the Ammonites, Jephthah made a vow to God that reflected both his faith and the tension he felt about his future. The vow was simple but carried a deep commitment. "If you give me victory over the Ammonites, whoever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace shall be dedicated to the Lord, and I will offer them as a burnt offering." This vow, though sincere, also reveals a limited understanding of how God should be worshipped and honored. In his distress and desire to secure victory, Jephthah made a promise that involved an extremely serious personal sacrifice. He vowed to sacrifice the first person who came out of his house upon his victorious return, without knowing who that person would be. Jephthah's vow can be interpreted in different ways, but the key point is that he believed that in order to secure divine favor, he needed to offer something significant and costly. The vow also highlights a common human tendency to try to control divine outcomes through extreme actions or rituals, as if God's favor could be earned through bargaining. This type of thinking was prevalent at the time, even though the Bible teaches that God does not desire empty sacrifices or forced actions, but rather a sincere heart. Jephthah's vow, therefore, should be seen as both an expression of his faith and fear, as well as an attempt to negotiate with God, without fully grasping the weight of his promise. When Jephthah returned victorious, the tragic consequence of his vow unfolded. The first person to come out of his house was not an animal or something that could be sacrificed without pain, but his own daughter, his only child. This heartbreaking moment reflects the dark side of making vows in moments of desperation, without fully considering the consequences. Jephthah's reaction was one of deep sorrow, as he realized that breaking his vow would mean dishonoring God. He faced immense grief, knowing that he was about to lose the most precious thing in his life. The fulfillment of Jephthah's vow is one of the most tragic and impactful moments in the biblical narrative. When Jephthah returned victorious from battle, his daughter, his only child, came out to meet him with tambourines and dancing. Jephthah's pain was immense, as he knew he could not break his vow. His daughter, in turn, displayed great maturity by accepting the situation with courage, asking only for time to grieve her fate in a dignified manner. She requested 2 months to go to the mountains with her friends and mourn her virginity, as she understood that she would never have children, a significant loss in the Israelite culture of that time. The story of Jephthah and his daughter presents a profound lesson about the weight of words and promises made before God. Although the vow was made impulsively and led to tragedy, Jephthah's daughter showed obedience and acceptance in the face of suffering, a rare and remarkable attitude. However, the sacrifice of his daughter is never portrayed in the Bible as an acceptable or common practice before God. In fact, the Bible condemns human sacrifice in other passages. Therefore, this painful story teaches us that there are serious consequences when one attempts to manipulate or bargain with God. Jephthah's actions, though motivated by sincerity, resulted in a tragic mistake. He likely never imagined that fulfilling his vow would lead to such an irreparable loss. This story also serves as a warning to those who make rash promises or attempt to control God's plan through personal sacrifices without truly understanding his will. God does not desire human sacrifices or empty rituals, he desires humble and obedient hearts. The suffering of Jephthah and his daughter should remind us of the importance of acting with wisdom, humility, and, above all, seeking divine guidance before making significant decisions in our lives. So, everyone, what did you think of this intense and insightful story? Jephthah teaches us, among other things, that our choices often come with great responsibilities and that we must think carefully before making impulsive decisions, especially when they involve commitments to God. His life serves as a reminder that when seeking leadership or making promises, we should act with wisdom and always remember that our actions have consequences. I hope this video was helpful to you and brought an important reflection. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel Bible and Faith, and turn on notifications to receive more videos like this. See you next time.